Man was to be created as a leader over the elements and over the visible kingdoms of nature. And at the present moment of all the kingdoms, he is probably the least honest. Animals are not dishonest. Plants are not dishonest. Minerals certainly are not dishonest. We do not recognize these virtues in them at all. But they have no faults because they have no individuality. They are under group leadership, and each fulfills that which is necessary to advance the collective. We have reached a point in mental individuality where we are not considering the collective. We are not doing the things which makes the greater good for all. We are doing that which we feel is the greatest good for ourselves, or those small groups to which we belong. We have done exactly the same thing in politics, religion, ethics, education, economy, and all the divisions of society. Everything now is the fulfillment of personal ambition, and no consideration for that which is the basic reason for being here. We are not here by accident, even though it might seem biologically that we are. We are here because there is a group entity which is sending forth these beings into material distance in order to teach them one of the greatest rules and laws in life, and that is to keep the rule. We find that actually, from the cradle to the grave, we are passing through initiational tests. We are being tried. We are being weighed in the balance. We are being subjected to disciplines of various kinds. And there can be no peace, no security, no true growth in the world until the individual accepts the discipline, lives according to it, and shares the new wisdom that he develops with others of a similar nature and works together with others for the betterment of the entire. Until these principles are well understood, the problem is very difficult. Comenius, the Moravian educator, gave us the secret of the public school system. He tells us very simply that the reason for the public school is to teach us the importance of working together for the common good. That education, educo, is from the word which means to draw forth, to bring out from within ourselves certain knowledge that is inherent. And this knowledge, which is inherent, is the most important of all. That is the truest knowledge that we have. Knowledge from the outside may lead to skill in arts and sciences, but it does not lead to the perfection of integrity. All that is good in man's philosophy comes from within himself. All that is a mistake comes from following the examples of those who have failed to achieve individual integration. So we have now, as Comenius said, and what has later been said by a number of others, that actually our education, as far as nature is concerned, is complete when we are 21 years old. But even before that, we do not require as much of the schooling as we think we do. We are educated in fallacies. We are educated in mistakes. We are given a reward, a degree, a recognition for doing the wrong thing. We are given honors and values in life and become important and heroic personalities by making mistakes. Actually, the entire theory of our world as it is at the present time is the victory of the unimportant over the essential. And as long as it remains that way, we're in trouble. Now, if we want to start in from the inside out, we have to recognize definitely that what is lying within us is actually a form of natural intellect. It is a form of intelligence that is based upon what is locked in the cells and in the tissues and in the substances which we bring with us into birth. Each of the little cells in our body has an intelligence of its own. All these intelligences become together great groups of populations within ourselves. When we break the rules, the individual cell suffers. When we break the rules badly enough, the whole structure suffers. And when we allow exploitation to cause us to live badly, we destroy the entire pattern of our own survival. There's only one way in which we can achieve that which we most want, and that is we have to do it right in the first place. And if having done it right, we are able to see the consequences, there will be very little problem of failure to cooperate. But we have set up a vicious mechanism here by rewarding mistakes. We have made the mistake the important thing, and we have not given the necessary understanding of the background of the problem. The average person who goes to school has no idea why humanity exists. He has no idea concerning a spiritual factor in material existence. He has no general comprehension of the rules of life as these differ from the rules of social and political structures. He does not know where he came from. He does not know why he is here, and he has no idea where he's going. And on this compound ignorance, we offer degrees and make brilliant scholars of the people who have never answered any of those questions. It is one of these amazing things that we have created a great hierarchy of well-lettered ignorance. We have made everything subservient not to wisdom, but to the passing advantages of the hour. We're in exactly this position politically today. We are concerned not at all with what is good for the people, but what is advantageous to certain groups within the people. We are not able to decide what constitutes a good government, and therefore we have a bad one. We do not understand why we should work together, so we do not. And yet, how can we be educated without at least a glimmer of realization of the importance of cooperation? How can we become strong and powerful without keeping any ethical rules or accepting any responsibility for our own mistakes? This is why we go back to people like Plato and Aristotle, Pythagoras, to understand something about these principles. And they say there are two ways of being governed. One from the inside, which is right, and the other from the outside, which is wrong and unnecessary. If the inside is right, the outside will be right. If the inside has no chance, is unable to manifest itself, then the outside is almost certain to be corrupt. And if there are corrections made from the outside, they serve only the needs of the outside. And that part of the individual which is within himself and most valuable is still neglected. So we say to ourselves, this golden fleece that we are all seeking is inside of our own natures. We bring it with us into birth. We live with it all our lives. Occasionally we let a moment of it come through, but become frightened with our own audacity and go back again to the shelter of the herd, to the shelter of the conventions of the many, with no regard for the integrity of the life within ourselves. Now, as a result of this type of attitude, and this type of solution, or lack of it, we produce a world of problems, a world which is getting into a very sticky wicket at the present time. We are on the verge of more trouble, simply because we have never tried to find out what causes trouble. And when we find out what causes it, the answer is ignorance. Now, ignorance is either simple or complex. A simple ignorance is not to know that which is right. Compound ignorance is not to know when we are wrong. We have got to find ways in which to remedy our own mistakes. And this was part of the old philosophy of Egypt. When the time came for the individual to take the rights, to accept maturity, to accept the responsibility of life, and this was also true of the American Indian tribes of this continent. When the time came, become a citizen, the individual is not made one. He becomes one by a dedicated expression of his own integrity. He is put through certain tests, and very interesting points of one of them was recorded by Cortez in his conquest of Mexico. The Aztecs had a very strong attitude on the subject of drink. Now, we might not assume that pulque, or whatever they were drinking in those days, was unimportant. But the Aztecs had a simple rule, that any individual under 50 who drank broke law and was punished. There could be no such a thing as a juvenile alcoholic, because if the individual drank under the age of 50, then he was punished. If after 50 he took a little now and then, it was condoned. It was no longer a rule. It was because it was assumed that he was tired, that he was maybe a little infirm, a little discouraged with life, and it was all different. But youth could not do it. This is a rather interesting rule. Supposing we made it impossible for anyone under 50 to sin without being punished, there wouldn't have institutions room for them. We wouldn't be able to live with ourselves. And yet the principle is just part of nature, that you want the youth to support the nation. You want young people to grow, to build, create. And if you fill them up with some kind of alcoholic liquid or narcotics or something of that nature, you destroy the future of the country. The Aztecs knew this. Apparently we haven't got quite up to that yet. We are still suffering from self-imposed ignorance. So we start in and we study the problems of mind. Now what is mind's primary situation? What is the mind here to do? It is here to lead the compound of the body toward the growth which nature demands. The mind is given to us that we may think straight, that we may have the courage to grow. It gives us also the impulse to learn more by the consideration of the phenomena of life around us. It is all part of the pattern of maturity. The mature person is thoughtful, responsible, and eager to learn that which is necessary and right. The mature person expects to control habits, expects to put principles above personality. All these things are possible when the mind leads the body. If, however, the mind becomes simply a slave of the pressures of the animal kingdom, then we no longer have this situation. The mind becomes the arch conspirator. The mind makes all kinds of wonderful plans for the simple purpose of taking the individual away from his own integrities. He has no solid ground of integrities. So here we should begin with what constitutes education. We should have the world working with this problem. The world should be working with the concept that education is learning to be a citizen of the world, and that the world that is made up of educated people can go on for 1,000 years without a war, because wars are all the result of the acceptance of ignorance. They are the result of breaking laws, breaking the rules, and employing violent means of accomplishing what should be attained by the kindness of spirit. So in the development of civilization, the problem comes, what should we teach the young? Well, it's good to teach them the alphabet, I guess. We have to communicate with each other. Of course, we hardly have to read and write anymore. That's all computerized. We hardly have to make any decisions of importance. They're all classically developed along lines of prevailing patterns. Now we see, for instance, the problem with the computer. Here we have a very useful device, and the development and invention of it had to come from within, because it represents the use of exact rules which the individual and community existence put together have worked out for a number of years. It is therefore a hopeful thing, something that can bring usefulness and bring education and bring enlightenment to people. So, how are we going to use it? Probably the same way we use television. We're going to abuse it, we're going to exploit it, we're going to make it the basis of a wave of crime we have never known the likes of which before. We are going to take this thing that might be useful, and because we are ignorant, we will destroy it. And the mere fact that we are scientific enough to invent it does not mean that we are moral enough not to abuse it. So somewhere there is the skill to do, and the ignorance to do wrong. These things have become very important in the study of the mental life of the human being.